Hello and welcome to On the Wrist. Today I have the privilege to handle something very unique, a 3D printed watch. This is the Radio Active model by Felix Toucan, and this watch, the case, bracelet, is all entirely 3D printed. Additionally, Felix Toucan strives to have fully sustainable as well as ethical materials. We'll get into all the technical details about this watch as well as the company in just a minute, but this video will be a full technical review as well as design review. So, let's get right into it. Before we get started, I do want to clarify that this watch was sent to me for review by Felix Toucan. This watch will be going back to them right after the review, and they don't have any input into the actual review itself, but I just wanted to make you all aware. I want to start off by talking about Felix Toucan, the brand. I had never heard of this until I stumbled across them on Instagram, and this is a Portland, Oregon-based single-person company. They had a dream that they could use a 3D printer to make a watch, and this is the result. One thing I find exceptionally awesome is that all of these have a plant-based resin with no petroleum, and all of their packaging is plant-based and 100% recyclable. Additionally, they've gone through extraordinary effort to make sure that all of their parts are as ethically sourced as possible, making sure to secure it from known sources rather than getting it from dubious third-party sources. It's refreshing to see a watch brand with a focus on the ethical sustainability and the material sustainability of their watches, so it's a very unique thing for someone to come in with no experience in the watch industry and make their dream a reality, as well as do this interesting, unique stance. Now, the design of this watch in particular, so the front face, as you can see, to me looks like a blast door. This watch is called Radio Active. So naturally, in a radioactive environment or where there's potentially radiation, there are going to be some heavy security features like blast doors with a very significant lock. This watch looks a lot like a porthole in one of those doors, and I love that they've taken use of the natural look of the 3D printing materials in that crosshatch and made it a fixture of the design. The red second hand is a nice addition to break up the yellow color, which I thoroughly enjoy, but it is certainly a vibrant shade of yellow. Coming down to the bracelet has a really cool crosshatch in the center, which again takes beautiful use of the natural way 3D printing looks, and that on the inside of that crosshatch. And the bracelet's cool because it's a very angular bracelet, which fits very nicely with the industrial feel of this design. Now, let's talk about technical specs. So the dimensions of this watch I measured with the caliper. The diameter from the flat to the D is 45 millimeters with a 44 millimeter lug to lug. The thickness is 12.9 millimeters thick. The movement is the Ronda 763 quartz movement with a 3-year battery. The water resistance is 65 feet, and the material, as I mentioned before, plant-based, non-toxic, polylactic acid filament. There is a special note that you don't want to bring this watch anywhere above 140 degrees Fahrenheit because that is the melting point of the material. It should also be noted that there is no lume on the dial. For this section of the video, I've left on the sound of the bracelet. Listen to kind of how loud it is as we look at the clasp in particular. So one thing I was very nervous about was that the fact that this clasp is actually 3D printed as well. However, I found that it was actually really quite awesome once you actually got used to it. It takes a little while to be confident to click it together, but once you do, that's then actually really quite easy to take apart, and it feels very solid. Being 3D printed, I was afraid it would be really fragile and I would break it when using it. However, I've used it a bunch of times since, and it actually holds up really quite well. As you can see there, it's listed as patent pending, and no wonder why. Very cool that he was able to get this kind of clasp by printing it. Here we have it on my 7.5-inch wrist, and I gotta say I was shocked at how comfortable this watch was. Knowing that it was a 3D printed bracelet, I was ready for it to be very uncomfortable. However, it has been very pleasant on the wrist, and the links fit quite nicely. You get some very pleasant slide, so really pleased with how comfortable it is. From a look perspective, this is obviously a conversation piece, flashy, fun, and definitely large on the wrist, but that's what you're going to get with this size watch. Let's talk MSRP and value. MSRP of this watch is $129. Honestly, in that range, it's kind of the fashion watch category, and I gotta say, there's nothing I would really pick on this watch for at that price point. This is certainly a unique watch, 3D printed, custom, outlandish designs that you're buying because you love the design. At price, I think this is well positioned with those features in mind. And sure, I wish it was a sapphire crystal, I wish it was an automatic movement, but I don't think at $129 those things are reasonable to ask. One other thing to bring up, as I mentioned earlier in the video, is the watch is kind of loud. Because it's 3D printed, the links sort of click as you move it around, which not a big deal overall, but just something to be aware of. There are also many other options in this collection. I'll show a few on the screen here, all of which available at felixtoucan.com, link in the description. So overall, I'm really excited to see what Felix Toucan does in the future. He has a lot of really cool designs, as you can see here, and I'm interested to see how this launch of his goes and what comes next. Orders for this watch and other Felix Toucan watches open March 1st, so get ready, save the webpage, and take a look. That's all I have for today, but if you have any comments, I'd love to hear what you think about this watch. Do you like the design? What's your view on 3D printed watches? And is there anything you would change for this price point? Let me know down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. That's all for me today. This has been On The Wrist. Thank you for watching.